Welcome to Behind the Mic with AudioFile magazine, where the subjects are audiobooks and the actors who narrate them. I'm Josephine Reed, and with me, Kendra Winchester. Hello, Kendra.
Hello, Joe. How are you?
I'm fine. And I know all three of your books are science fiction and fantasy. So why don't we first talk about what those three books are and then what attracts you to sci-fi and fantasy?
All right. The audiobooks that I chose this week are Moderation by Elaine Castillo, read by the author, Sunbirth by Anu, read by Mei Mei Macleod, and The Possession of Alba Diaz by Isabel Cañas, read by Caroline Hoyos and Anthony Ray Perez. And I just love science fiction and fantasy. There's something that draws me to this like speculative sort of world. It really was my first love as a teenager, and it's just stayed with me through adulthood.
Okay, so why don't we start with Moderation? Tell us a little bit about the book. And Elaine Castillo is the narrator as well as the author. So I really want to hear about that.
Yes. So moderation was, very unexpected in how much I adored this audiobook. It starts with Girly. Now, Girly is not her given name at work. They have everyone choose fake names. And so that kind of just sticks with her throughout the novel. But she works as a moderator for a major social media platform. So she goes and sees all the horrible things that people flag and decides whether or not they're taken down from the platform. So she sees the worst of humanity every day. And right out of the gate with this audiobook, we are let into her experience being trained for this position.
I just want to say, because I listened to a hunk of the book, and there should be sort of a listener, a trigger warning in the beginning of the book,
Yes.
because I almost fell off the treadmill.
Yes, there is a very strong content warning because throughout the book, it is mentioned what she sees. And when we get into virtuality, what she is moderating there. And so there's a lot of graphic imagery. So just as a heads up, that's in this. But we start out there. And at first, you feel like this is going to be a very depressing kind of book where everything is terrible and will always stay terrible. Like you feel like that is going to be the vibe of this audiobook, but that is not the way that the story takes. And the direction that it takes is very surprising in the best possible way.
I also, as I said, I've only listened to a part of the book, but I was impressed by how well she and thoroughly she talks about Filipina stereotypes and her experience as an immigrant daughter, part of an immigrant family, and the responsibility that confers on her, and one that she feels very strongly.
Yes, this is a book about class, it's about immigrant families, and it's about Gurley's family who lost everything during the 2008 financial crisis. And so they had bought homes in Las Vegas, and they ended up all ending, several different family of their extended family are in this one big house trying to make it. They're all working class jobs, trying to pay off this debt from the several houses that they bought during this time. And it is a very complex and very smart novel in that way, the way that she tackles class and that the jobs that people have and what is working class jobs in our contemporary time. But also, you have this element where her social media company acquires this virtual reality company. So Girly is like thrust into the present into this fictional science fiction reality where she's a moderator in a virtual reality and that becomes her new job.
And let's talk about Elaine as a narrator. I had thoughts. What were your thoughts?
I think she can be hit or miss. I really appreciate her dialogue. I
Me
think
too.
that the way that she's able to do dialogue is so subtle and very interesting. But sometimes you can get kind of lost in this exposition that she does. So it really depends. I could see people enjoying her. I could also see people getting kind of frustrated.
Yeah, I think I was frustrated by her narrative voice. I felt like it was kind of flatline,
Mhm.
but I honestly was very impressed by the way she could voice characters.
Yes.
She really does do dialogue well. I felt like she knew how she wanted her characters to sound. She knew exactly how she wanted them to sound, and she had the ability and the talent to do that.
I found that really interesting. And, after I listened to Moderation, I went and listened to a longer essay that she performed on Everand. It's called Good Girl. It's all about dogs. I think you would love it. Uh, But it was very interesting. There's a different way that she performs that very personal nonfiction essay versus this fiction piece. And so I'd be very interested to hear what listeners think about the way that Elaine Castillo is performing these, different pieces. But she definitely has talent. I would love to see her kind of grow that talent in a certain way and or work on exposition. And I think that could be done well. But overall, I really enjoyed the story, and I think that's where the strength of this audiobook is.
Well, why don't we hear a little bit? Do we need to set this up?
Yeah, so this is the world that she lives in, and I think this does a great job of setting up who she is as a character.
All right. This is Moderation. It's written in red by Elaine Castillo.
Think of yourself as someone who makes our social media family a safe and fun place for everybody, that early job description read. The best candidates will not only be able to apply content policy and execute handling procedures with consistency and efficiency, but will also be able to identify subtle differences in the meaning of digital communication and accurately enforce the client's terms of use. Here at Readin', we believe that a community that learns together grows together. You will actively benefit from and participate in employee assistance programs, program reporting initiatives, and appropriate training to foster your well-being and the well-being of our entire employee family. You may find that we love a good party, and you can usually expect one to be happening on campus somewhere. Now come on, we need your full concentration. It's time to imagine what it's like being a content moderator.
So even though we heard just a little of the narrative voice in this clip, you can hear her ability to really voice characterizations with the peppy sort of ad campaign for the company.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that, yeah, like we said, that definitely is her strength.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so that is followed by Sunbirth, and that's written by Anne Yu, and it's narrated by Mei Mei Macleod. So tell us about this one.
So Sunbirth is a weird book in the best possible way in that it's set in a world where the slices of the sun have begun disappearing. And it's described as like a pie, like slices of the sun just beginning to disappear. We are dropped into the story about 12 years into pieces of the sun disappearing. And we have our unnamed narrator who works at her grandfather's old pharmacy. And she has her sister there, and they are going about their lives just trying to survive in this strange new world. And they realize that their father, who died several years ago, they thought he died on the job as a policeman, but then they realized that something else happened to him. And he became a beacon, which is like where the person's head kind of turns into a light, and these strange people, like, we don't know what's going on. So it is a very strange book, but the strength of it, I think, is that it's character driven, and we are dropped into these people's lives, and they are just fully fleshed out and beautiful in an incredible way.
Well, she wrote Ghost Music and Braised Pork,
Yes.
and they're both odd books, but
Yes.
boy, does she get character. She's so character driven. I really like her work, and I haven't listened to this yet. I really can't wait to listen.
And this is the audiobook I listened to while flying out to California, and I fell in love with Mei Mei Macleod's performance almost instantaneously. There's something about it that there's full of energy, and I could listen to her read off a grocery list. Like, there's something about her energy that really captures the first person narration of this audiobook, and I just was immediately sucked in.
I also read that there are many, many side characters in this book. I mean, as there typically are for
Yes.
her. And so this is a feast for a narrator and a feast for us when it's a really good narrator.
Yes. And, the plot is, I don't want to say that it's secondary because that implies that it's not important. It is important. But what really shines, like we've been talking about, are these characters and they're kind of side quests. There's like a delivery man who sexually harasses our protagonist. And eventually, our protagonist ends up meeting his wife and what that's like for her. And then there is a young girl who wants to go off into the desert. So this is set in a town surrounded by desert. So no one can actually leave this town to go see what other people in the world are doing with this whole sun disappearing situation. And so she wants to go off into the desert and figure out, like, if there's anything out there. And there's just so many different things going on in this short, audiobook, but the characters, they do shine.
Well, why don't we listen to a little bit?
Yeah, so this portion is just kind of setting up the world a little bit. You get to know, you get to hear Mei Mei Macleod's performance, which is phenomenal. And then you just kind of dropped into this world, and it's so strange and beautiful in so many ways.
Why don't we listen to a little bit of it? And do you need to set this up?
This is just a little bit of the world, and you get to hear Mei Mei Macleod's performance, and it kind of just drops you into this strange atmosphere, this strange little town that our protagonist lives in.
All right. This is Sunbirth by Anne Yu, and it's read by Mei Mei Macleod.
I awoke thinking that it was dawn, but turned out it was already 8 in the morning. If Gaoshuang hadn't been ringing the doorbell, I would have still been asleep. "It's so dark," I said as I opened the door. It must have looked rather unseemly. I hadn't even washed my face. "Thank God. You had Dongzi worried. She called me to come check on you. What took you so long? Did you see the weather forecast?" "Why? Did another piece of the sun disappear?" 20%, he said. "In fact, they said it was slightly more than 20% that went away overnight. But there's something else. I don't even know where to begin. You better see for yourself. I just came here to make sure you're safe." 20%? Are you sure? Take a look at the sky. I charged outside, still wearing my pajamas. The cold was like nothing I'd felt before. The ground was obscured under a thick layer of snow. Was this what it was like to be living at the end of the world?
First of all, she has a beautiful voice.
Yes.
That huskiness is amazing. And you can hear the accents in this, and they're not over the top, but boy, are they distinct.
Right? The subtlety of Mei Mei Macleod's performance is phenomenal. I went and looked up other audiobooks that she's performed. I was just so deeply impressed. And, I love that there are more audiobooks available, but it means for me that there are, fewer audiobook narrators that really grip me
Mhm.
immediately, and I want to go listen to everything. And so when I find one, it is just a magical moment. And that happened with Sunbirth for sure. So I'm excited to see what Mei Mei Macleod performs next.
I can tell you what she has that I really liked, and it's Shanghai Immortal,
Oh,
and it's a fantasy.
I will definitely check that out.
Yeah, so I think that's up your alley. You'll love it. And the third book, take it away.
Yes, this is The Possession of Alba Diaz by Isabel Cañas, and this is read by Carolina Hoyos and Anthony Ray Perez. And this is a horror romance, which until I read Isabel Cañas for the first time a year or two ago, I didn't know existed. But it's a blend of romance and horror and this fantastical elements, and it's delightful.
And I also, because I've read Cañas as well, both The Hacienda and Vampires of El Norte, and it's also historical. So
Yes.
it's historical fiction. It's historical horror fiction with love
Yes.
stories. So it's like 3 for 1 here.
It is, and if you love horror, it is delightful in the best possible way.
And I love historical fiction, so that really works for me because boy, does Cañas have a grip of the historical places and the period. She really gets her history.
Yes, and historical fiction, there's like a vibe you have to be able to imbue to your performance for an audiobook, and I think the narrators do a great job here. But this is about Alba Diaz, who is it's 17, I think like 65, and she is engaged to be married to a man she doesn't love. He doesn't really want to marry a woman, shall we say, and she wants to have more control of her life, so she kind of gets this marriage arranged for herself. Her parents aren't exactly happy, but she's kind of figured out a way to make it happen. But a plague breaks out in their city. And so they go to her fiance Carlos's family silver mine. And there on the way, she meets Elias, who is her Carlos's cousin. And she kind of is smitten by this very mysterious stranger that her fiance is related to. And, the love story commences.
And how is the narration divided up? Is Anthony Ray Perez Elias?
Yes.
Okay.
And, at first, I wasn't sure about the performance, but then I got to know Elias a bit better. And he's an angsty guy. He is so angsty, and he has like this dark past that he needs to get over in this very classical romance sort of way. And so I was like, "Oh, okay, I see what's going on here. Like this is the angst, the emotion that's going into this performance that doesn't quite land when you don't know him very well yet. So if you're struggling with it, just give it time and settle in, and the angst will appear, and you'll be like, "Oh, okay."
Well, I am predisposed to Anthony Ray Perez because he narrated Elmore Leonard's Glitz earlier this year, and it was fabulous. And in this book, what happens? The point of view changes throughout the book?
Yeah, so we kind of swap back and forth between the view of Alba and Elias. And the horror part of this is that Alba, well, I mean, it's on the title. So she happens to be possessed. And so
Yeah.
she doesn't know what to do. She's adopted. So when they get to this mine, she starts hearing voices and like there's this baby crying in the mine. We don't know what's going on. We find out pretty quickly that she is possessed. And so they're trying to figure out what to do amongst this. They're falling in love. There's a historical setting. And, what's very interesting, what Isabel Cañas does is that she really looks at race and ethnicity and the way that plays a role in this community of like a caste system that was in, early Mexican history.
Yeah, and as we both said, her grasp of history is really astounding. And who are we going to hear?
So we're going to hear from Anthony Ray Perez. You can really get to know Elias, I think, in this section, and like his backstory and what's going on with him as he goes from one country to another and eventually ends up in Mexico.
This is The Possession of Alba Diaz. It's by Isabel Cañas, and it's read by Carolina Hoyos and Anthony Ray Perez. We'll be hearing from Anthony.
Many weeks later, Elias cursed himself for taking the bait. Of course, he told himself that he meant to return to Spain anyway, that he had to, on behalf of his circle of scholars. Hadn't they all agreed that it would be easier for Elias to obtain their mercury from Sevilla than for any of them? It was logic, cold as metal. Elias knew Almedén and the black markets of Sevilla intimately. The arrival of his grandfather's letter merely hastened the planning. And the idea of speaking to his father for the first time in over 20 years, he hated that it drew at him. He hated how much he wanted it. He hated how questions and accusations spiraled themselves deep into his uneasy sleep on the ship that departed the sea of Marmara's calm waters for the docks of Barcelona.
It's an interesting narration. This is such a measured delivery, but you can sort of feel these undercurrents. It's almost like you're looking at,
Mm-hmm.
An ocean that seems calm on top, but it's roiling underneath.
Exactly.
The tsunami is about to come.
Yes, that really describes Elias for sure. All the things that are going on. And he has a bit of a backstory that I won't spoil, but it's really interesting to get to know him over the course of the novel.
Wonderful. Well, you had a really good week.
Yes, I love speculative fiction of all kinds, and I love genre blending. And, one of the things about all of these books is that there's romance elements in all of them. Some more than others. Like Moderation has like Regency romance inspirations that you would not expect.
And I also thought that Elaine was so good at narrating William, the
Yes,
love interest. I was stunned at how good she was.
absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And, there's a lot of genre blending that's happening in all of these books. And I appreciate that the authors are not afraid to, experiment and try new things.
I agree. Well, Kendra, thank you. And I will look forward to speaking with you next month.
Of course, looking forward to it.
Me too. Blackstone Publishing, sponsor of today's episode of Behind the Mic, is home to authors, narrators, readers, and listeners alike. Blackstone Publishing delivers powerful stories in print, audio, and digital. Come find your next great listen at blackstonepublishing.com. You've been listening to Behind the Mic with AudioFile magazine. Follow Behind the Mic wherever you get your podcasts, and do leave us a rating because it does help people to find us. Behind the Mic is produced by Jessica Lockhart, Robin Whitten, Michelle Cobb, Stephen Cummings, Leslie Fine, Alan Minskoff, Alex Ritchie, Laura Rossi, and Kendra Winchester are our contributors. Jennifer Dow and Coco McCracken are our editors. And the music is William Ross Chernoff's Nomads 4-Way. And I'm your host, Jo Reed. Good listening.